Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Marilyn Darling Show. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fountain pens and everything that I know about fountain pens so that you, a new user, can figure out what is what. We're going to talk about types of pens. We're going to talk about different types of nibs and sections and feeds and the body. We're going to talk about it all. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the business area. That is the nib. This little thing right here is called a nib. They come in many shapes. Where the hell did it go? Crap. They come in many shapes, many sizes. So you might have one nib that's really big and another nib that's really small. This one is a 2.9 millimeter nib. What does that mean? That means that the end of the nib, that's inches, is almost 3 millimeters. So, almost 3 millimeters. Right at the end, 2.9 millimeters. And they are made out of a single piece, usually made out of a single piece of metal. And the way that you can tell, this is the nib size. The very end is known as the point. The point size is usually put on the end of the in how many millimeters, or if it is a fine, this is an extra fine, and it has a very, very extra fine point. And this one, however, just said, it's a pilot medium. Some have the names on them, some do not. This is a dip pen nib. It doesn't have a normal long section that you stick into a nib. Instead, you have to use what some people call a stem or a pen holder. And it's usually about anywhere between a couple of inches to like 8, 9, 12, sometimes 16 inches. They get really big. But they hold nib and you dip it in the ink and then you write with it. And these come in many different flavors also. They come in wood or some sort of ivory or acrylic or metal. They come with many different nibs. This, for example, is called a balloon nib. And you put the little section inside of the metal of the barrel, like so. And it holds it and it makes it oblique, which is larger than 90 degrees from this point. So this would be 90 and this would be an oblique. And then you have more control over a lower angle so that way your ink doesn't run right off your nib. There's also glass dip nib pens, which use little grooves in glass as a reservoir, or the place that holds the ink, and then you put the tip to the paper to write with, and you dip just like you would one of these pens, only this is made out of glass, and these will usually be made out of aluminum, steel, things like that, some sort of metal. Now, you're going to find that the nibs come in many different looks. You're going to find that they have these things, which are called the wings, and this bit here goes inside of the section, so I call it the section holder. Okay, so this bit goes into the section holder. This bit goes into the section holder. This bit goes into the section holder. For an example, this is an extra fine Lamy style nib. Also, be prepared to drop them a lot because they're tiny and they're slick. So that is a Lamy style type nib, but not all Lamy style nibs fit on Lamy pens. This is a Lamy Vista. This is a Lamy 1.1 millimeter stub. But this Lamy style nib might not fit onto this one, but this one just happens to fit. Some only fit on other types of nibs. This is called a Yren. And if we took off the nib from the feed, the best way to do this is to this was, and of course I stabbed myself. It's brilliant. It's just freaking brilliant. At any rate, you can trust me that not all nibs fit into different types of pens. God fucking damn it. Sometimes you're going to need these. Just trust me. Go get yourself a pair of gentle pliers. Okay. Some feeds won't fit into a section, but only one way. So be on the lookout for that. So we've gone over the nibs. There's different types of nibs. There's different sizes of nibs. And how do you tell one from the other? Well, if you have a measuring device, you can usually tell that that's 5 millimeters, approximately 5 millimeters. And this one is approximately 6 millimeters. You see that? So a number 5 nib will fit in number 5 pins. And a number 6 nib will fit in a number 6 pen. This is a number 6. Also, the feeds are different sizes. We're going to talk about feeds. And now we're going to talk about feeds. The feed is the part that brings the ink down this feed section to the nib section. Now, this just happens to be a number 6 size nib. And it looks like this when it's put together. Now, some feeds and in pens are keyed, which means that you can only stick the feed in one way, and the feed will only go in that one way. See, it goes in that way. And then you can slip the nib in. Or, if you can get them out, I wouldn't advise using a grips, but try and put them together like so. And then sticking them in with the keyed side in. Like so. Okay. So the section is the feeds come in many different shapes and sizes also. Feeds come in large sizes and small sizes. Sometimes they have a wick going through them to deliver ink to the nib. They can be clear or opaque. They can be fixed or not fixed. I don't have any fixed pins, but that means that you cannot take the feed out of the section. So the feed goes inside of the feed housing or the grip housing, nib housing section. Many words for many different types of pens, and they're all kind of similar but different. So when they go together, this is the nib section housing. Okay. And the nib section housing goes into the grip section. Not all pens have a nib housing. Lamy style nibs don't have a nib housing. They only have this bit right here, which is all one piece. That takes the ink through the feed to the nib all the way out to the point. Now, depending on what type of ink you want to use will depend on the type of pen that you want to use. So there are some feed types with a wick that you can't really use shimmering inks on because they can't get shimmering inks through those little tiny fibers, but you can get really wet type of inks through those types of fibers, and you can use them on dip pens and other fountain pens. So what have we talked about so far? We've talked about nibs. We've talked about the nib housing. We talked about the feed. We've talked about the grip section. Now we're going to talk about cartridge converters, cartridges, and other filling systems. This is an ink cartridge. Now they come in many sizes. They come in small or large, and sometimes not all cartridges fit with all pens. For example, this is a Standard International short cartridge, but it will not fit into a Lamy pen, and you will know because you'll push down and you'll try and get it to go, but it won't snap into place. Lamy style nibs have a little nubbin right on the cartridge converter that goes into a space and goes right in there. This is a cartridge converter. A cartridge converter is used by putting it in a bottle of ink, twisting up this little bit here to suck up ink, and then you put it into the section which leads to the feed and out the nib. Other cartridge converters are push-pull, some are twist, and some are even aerometric converters. So, inside here, there is a breather tube and a bladder. And when the housing is on, you dip the pen in the ink and you squeeze the little lever, pushing air out, and then releasing will suck air through the ink or air through the breather tube into the bladder. And then the bladder goes to the feed, and the feed goes to the nib. Capiche? Nibs also come in very small housings that look like this. They can be tubular, or they have many other shapes. This is just one example of a fine hooded nib. And you know that it's a hooded nib because it kind of looks like it's wearing a hood. Kind of like Little Red Riding Hood. Got a little hood over the feed nib section. Cool? Alright. What's next? There's also, and this is a hooded nib section. Only I have made this one disassemblable. But if you were to get one of these and you can get this apart, you can pull the nib feed housing out, detach the cartridge converter. Make sure you keep these together because you don't want to lose them. You can take off the nib housing holder. And you can take off the nib, and inside is the feed. And a lot of these, will be pretty similar. I gotta say, a lot of them will be very similar. So, I'm putting it back together. Place this in here. Okay. Then screw this little bit. The shorter one. Nope. And then bloop. And then bloop. This is the cap. We have all seen a cap. This is the clip. It goes on a shirt pocket or in a pant pocket or some sort of clothing. The top bit is called the finial. And each pen shape is different. This is another type of a nib called a parallel. There are two plates put together where ink goes through from the cartridge through the feed and between the plates to go to the paper. And each one of the parallels will tell you what size the nib is. This is 1.5 millimeters. This is a piston converter pen. You depress the plunger, dip it into the ink, and then suck up the ink that way. Another option is you could keep it depressed, pull out the nib and feed carefully. You don't want to damage your pen. Pull out your nib and feed. And use a syringe, a blunt tip syringe, to suck up ink. Suck up ink. And there's a little tiny hole. Little tiny hole. Right there. That you can put your syringe in there and depress the ink. Replace the feed. Remember that some of the feeds are keyed, so you're going to have to usually look at the bottom. There's these two little plates. Two little plates here that will tell you where the bottom of the feed is. And you'll see there's a little rail, little tiny rail, and it goes right in that section. I hope that was helpful. Let's see. And then you put your nib back on. Now, I don't know how much of this has been helpful to you, but I hope that does explain a little bit about my knowledge about fountain pens. Now, you're going to come across all kinds of different nibs and sizes and feeds and interesting methods of filling. There's a vacuumatic filler system which uses air pressure to suck up ink. I don't own one of those currently at the moment, but it's on the list of things to buy. So I know that this has been a really long video. I really appreciate you guys coming along with me, and I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that you guys take something away from this. And if this was helpful to you and you're trying to show a friend about fountain pens, maybe share this with them. And some recommendations for if you're going to buy someone a fountain pen and you want them to have a range of experiences. I'll tell you right now, Wish.com has all kinds of fountain pens on there. Just one second. And you can go on Wish.com and you can find a fountain pen, a Gin Hell, for as low as $3. They have some for $2. And some are even free, just pay shipping. And they come in a range of sizes and colors and shapes. And sometimes they sell ink on there. And Wish.com is really where it's at if you're looking to buy a fountain pen. Check it out here first. See if you can get a deal. The only problem with Wish.com is that it takes about a month to get things delivered to your door. So it's kind of like Christmas every time you buy something from Wish.com. You never know when it's coming. So what you do is when you buy something, you go to your order history and you can see the item details and if it was delivered, and it also shows you where it is in the world, kind of. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. I hope that you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I hope that you guys have many interesting experiences with your fountain pens. And I thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Have a great day. I love you. Bye.